to you by NGK Spark Plugs. Sure fire from start to finish.
94 Gestetner Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally. AA Racing for Motorsport Magic. The Gestetner Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally is one of the highlights of the Southern African motorsport calendar. Over more than 20 years, the roof has earned its reputation as one of the world's toughest off-road races, and each year presents a challenge few off-roaders can resist. Each year, both the car and motorcycle categories draw entries from the cream of South African talent, along with competitors from overseas. The pre-race paddock areas were once again a hive of activity. Few motorsport events and certainly no off-road race would be the same without the last-minute preparations. There's always something that has to be fixed, replaced, polished or stuck onto a vehicle before a car or motorcycle goes through the scrutineering and documentation process. The Roof of Africa was this year the final round in the South African Cross-Country Rally Series. With a great deal at stake for championship contenders, nothing was being left to chance. With 3 days of racing ahead over some of the roughest country in Africa, a great deal of attention was being paid to detail. A huge amount of time and effort goes into preparing machinery for an event like the Roof, and during the pre-race formalities, the adrenaline starts to flow. The pre-race preparations are a prelude to the now traditional Round the Houses races. Backed this year by the Alliance Insurance Group, the Round the Houses is not only a race within a race, but turns Maseru, the capital of Lesotho, into a giant carnival. The Round the Houses races are a highlight of the year for many local residents, who queue from early in the morning for the best vantage points. For the competitors, the Round the Houses events also offer an early opportunity to stretch their legs. Some competitors get more of a kick out of the Round the Houses section than others. Much of the racing is highly spectacular, and drivers, riders and the crowd all enter into the spirit of the occasion. Events forming part of the South African Cross-Country Rally Series are run over a minimum distance of 1,000 kilometers. One of the beauties of the series is the varied conditions offered up by events which form part of the series. From the mealie fields of the Western Transvaal and the Botswana Desert to the mountains of Lesotho, the series provides a true test of man and machinery. A youthful-looking Paddy driver won the Roof of Africa in 1972. Driver's been racing for more than 40 years, and back in action in the AAD Video Sport Range Rover, he talked about the tremendous change in off-road racing over the years.
It's like daylight. It's like daylight, I promise you. The speed we were going in the truck, we would have won in 70, 72. Now, 22 years later, I mean, we're running at the back of the field. These Sandmasters with air suspension and 2 feet of travel, whatever it is that they've got, I mean, they just go over the bumps. They don't even know the bumps are there. And we're busy gritting our teeth and hanging on and getting headaches and sore necks and God knows what. The sport has changed a hell of a lot.
Among the top contenders was Toyota Desert Race winner Rob Walk.
Ultimately, I'd love to win, but ultimately, I'd also like to finish, because I've actually never finished a Roof. I've won a Roof with Richard as navigator, which I really enjoyed, but actually driving, I've never finished a Roof, so that's my first challenge. And then obviously, I'd love to win. I mean, that would be the cherry on top.
Defending champions Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek were aiming to make it 2 in a row.
Jou beplanning hier moet regtig reg wees. Jy weet, ek glo jy moet jou voertuig heel hou. Jy moet regtig vinnig ry, maar in dieselfde asem moet ek vir jou sê jy moet hom heel hou. Dit help nie om jou voertuig in die eerste dag te breek en dan dink jy gaan die tweede dag wen nie. My voertuig is in 'n perfekte toestand. So ek dink ons het 'n baie goeie kans. As die teëspoed ons tref, kan ons baie goed doen.
We take another trip down the Roof of Africa memory lane. Frans Chepek won the Roof twice in a row in the late 70s in single-seaters. Frans was back for more this year, with son Frans Jr. doing the navigating in the V-Motors race car.
Well, technology has changed a hell of a lot. Cars are a lot quicker, and the suspensions are a lot better. The handling is a lot better. They all got power steering now. You wouldn't be able to drive these cars without power steering because they're so big. And well, the wheel travel is doubled or trebled, and the cars are much bigger. They're all built out of chromoly, all the proper cars, and they're really high tech, and it's a pleasure to drive them.
Once a year, high-speed race machinery disturbs the Lesotho mountain tranquility. One of the most colourful characters in off-road racing is veteran Linton Draper.
I've been coming here since 1977, and since 1989 now I've not finished a roof, so what you saw today was extreme discipline. That was total discipline, which is foreign to me on a racetrack and all the rest of it. And hopefully, all I'm looking for this time is not a win, but a finish, because I reckon if you finish, you have a possibility of winning.
The Round the Houses event on the opening day of the roof is combined with a time trial to determine start positions for racing Section 1 the following day. Also among the pre-race favourites were Springbok, Brooks Carolyn and Jeff Bell in the turbocharged dealer team Toyota Hilux. A strong showing was also expected from Settlers 400 winners Herman and Karl-Heinz Sulwald. Another Toyota pairing, Springbok's R.P. Reyneke and Lucas Dreyer, won the roof in 1989. Out in the Toyota Land Cruiser, the pair went into the roof lying second in the cross-country series. A strong challenge was also expected from Nick Harper and Darrell Hill in the Rockwell Raceco. Veteran Harry Roscoe was out in the lubrication equipment Raceco single-seater, normally campaigned by Richard Carolyn. Roscoe doesn't have happy memories of the roof after a huge accident 2 years ago, but in the true spirit of the race was back for more punishment. Making steady progress in the time trial were Marius and Margie Bahrain in one of the early vintage Racecos. Competitors in the cross-country series compete in the production vehicle and special vehicle categories, with brother Wade and Grant Perrins among the more consistent crews in the special vehicle category in the Lolette Sadmaster. It was not a happy event for Stan Illman and Franz Stangl, who 2 years ago won their class in a Porsche 911. They rolled the Carrera Motors Raceco in the time trial and were forced to withdraw. The Visser-Cronje combination in a Toyota Hilux were the fastest of the Class E competitors in the time trial. While Visser and Cronje went their merry way, there were problems for Paddy Driver and Tony Salvage when the Video Sport Range Rover came to a halt with a broken radius arm.
They can fix that up and weld it and make it a bit stronger, and we'll keep going again.
On the motorcycle front, 5-times winner Alfie Cox was an outright favourite on the Pro Action Castrol KTM, but took it easy to set the 8th fastest time. Springbok Errol Dalton has not been a regular in this year's off-road series, but made a welcome return on the Schummels Yamaha and was 6th fastest in the time trial. The flamboyant Willie Ireland on the SKF Delmas Diesel Suzuki carried a race cam fitted to his helmet. Dramatic footage provides for a graphic picture of what it takes to ride a motorcycle on the roof of Africa. A legendary figure in South African off-road racing, Charlie Tison now lives in the United States, but was back to renew old acquaintance with the race. Tison's now in the veterans category, and it was one of the young lions of South African off-road racing who set the pace in the time trial. Lesotho office equipment rider Yuri Human is a real flyer, and on a couple of occasions this season has been in with a chance of winning a national event. Human set a cracking pace in the time trial, but was beaten by surprise package Tom Klaassen on a Kawasaki, who led the 500 class. The intrepid quad races always provide for some spectacular action, with the quads this year enjoying national championship status for the first time. It's tough work manhandling a quad over rough terrain, and it was Francois Coetzee on a Suzuki who was the quickest of the quads on the time trial. Italian Richard Manning, winner of the Land Rover Barberspun 1000 earlier in the season, led home the 200 class motorcycles on the Winston Yamaha. Bloemfontein rider Graham McLaughlin was second fastest in the 200 class on the Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki. And while the competitors were hard at work out on the route, race officials were equally busy at rally headquarters. A comprehensive radio network kept track of competitors' progress through various checkpoints, with times and results radioed back to the official scorers. Tom Klaassen was the surprise name in the top 10 in the motorcycle time trial results. The other top 10ers were all expected to be in the leading group. On the car side, Harry Roscoe grabbed pole position in the single-seater raceco. A feature of the results was the fact that only 2 production vehicles were in the top 10. Stay tuned for more highlights from the Roof of Africa Rally.
A romance that enthralled the world. A fairy tale wedding. Why then did they live unhappily ever after? In this week's Sunday Times, read the serialization of David Dimbleby's biography of Prince Charles. You won't be amused if you miss it.
The quest for speed, achievement and enhanced performance is the driving force that relentlessly pushes them beyond all limits. Enhanced performance that demands the ultimate spark plugs. When you share that same dedication to motoring excellence and winning performance, fit your car with the ultimate spark plugs. Bosch.
So, what you in for?
Pulled a hamstring.
Bad?
Real bad. How long you got? 3 months. What's happened to him?
6 weeks for spraining a ligament.
6 weeks? And him?
Life.
For fast relief from swelling and pain, rub in Orugel when you've got no time for injury time.
Who's that?
Mo said he did his knee in.
Did what?
Ugly.
No one with any experience of the Roof of Africa Rally was in any doubt that the route for Racing Section 1 would test crews and competitors to the limit. Conditions were expected to favour the special vehicles, with little prospect of rain. As is usual on off-road events, there was an early morning start, with an air of tension starting to come to the surface. For Harry Roscoe in the single-seater, there was the added problem of having to both drive and navigate.
Exactly the year I almost won the roof is to follow somebody that knows where they're going and come in close to the finish, close up to the finish within a couple of minutes, and then next day we can go racing. That's my plan.
If it doesn't rain, which it doesn't think it's going to, I think we're going to do well. I think the 4x4s are going to be suffering a bit on the bumps.
Roscoe must have had mixed feelings as he led away the field. He was in exactly the same position 2 years ago and was going like a train when he had a huge accident that left him with a badly injured back. The lubrication equipment single-seater was followed by the Chepek father and son combination in the V-Motors raceco, with the first 4 cars on the road all running in the special vehicle category. It didn't take the Chepeks long to catch and pass Roscoe. Not that Roscoe would have been unhappy about the situation. Having the Chepeks in front of him provided Roscoe with a navigation aid, but it was also not long before the Sulwald brothers started to close in on the single-seater. Despite having the Chepeks playing a pathfinding role ahead of him, Roscoe was at a disadvantage in a straight fight with the twin-seater crews. Roscoe had his work cut out to stay ahead of the Sulwald brothers, who earlier in the season scored their first national championship win in the Settlers 400. The Sulwalds, who hail from Secunda, are chargers, and all they wanted was to get ahead of the single-seater and have a go at catching the Chepeks. Rob Walk in the Super Pave Raceco was in the same boat as Roscoe in terms of having to do his own navigating. Walk also scored his first national championship win earlier in the season when he won the Toyota Desert Race, and like Roscoe, crashed in a big way in the 1992 Roof of Africa when he drove off the side of a cliff. Not far behind Walk, the dealer team Toyota Hilux of Bux Carolyn and Jeff Bell was holding on to 4th place. Behind them, some hectic racing was starting to develop, with the Rockwell Raceco, driven by Nick Harper and Darrell Hill, starting to come under pressure from Linton Draper and Mike Pretorius. In hot pursuit of the Draper Pretorius Raceco were defending champions Cassie Kutsia and Richard Leake in the factory-backed Toyota Hilux. Behind them, Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the AAD Land Rover were on a charge after starting in 15th position. Barker and Redden led the production vehicle and overall cross-country series championship going into the roof and were desperate for a good result. And now another trip down memory lane. In 1984, Neil Woolridge won the Roof of Africa on a 500 Kawasaki motorcycle. Woolridge now campaigns in off-road on 4 wheels in the Sani Motorsport entry and reports that driving and riding the roof are different animals.
It's totally different. It's, I think a lot more mentally tired sitting in a car, because you've got to sit and bounce around all the time. You can't stand up and move around, and you can't miss rocks and things like that. You've got to crash over everything, so you get pretty tired sitting in that car. But not too physically tired, but very mentally tired.
For Racing Section 1, the motorcycle contingent followed a different route to the cars. It was going to be just as tough, with poleman Darrell Curtis on the Winston Yamaha setting his sights on a place in the top 5 at the end of day 1.
Right, I'm happy to be where I am starting first. If anybody comes up behind me, I can at least stay with them. I'm going to try finish in the first 5 at the end of today.
After taking it easy in the time trial, 5-times winner Alfie Cox decided it was time to stop playing games and came flying through the field on the Pro Action Castrol KTM. When he's in the mood, and that's most of the time, Cox is in a class of his own in South African off-road. And it didn't take him long to scythe through the field and move ahead of Tom Claassen to take 2nd place. Claassen was also under pressure from Errol Dalton on the Shimwells Yamaha, who was 3rd in the 250 class behind Curtis and Cox. Claassen was leading the 500 class, but was about to lose out to Yuri Human on the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki, with the big guns starting to fire on all cylinders. Richard Manning is the only rider to have twice won marathon events on a 200 machine, and was the first of the 200 brigade on the Winston Yamaha. Behind him, Willie Ireland was also starting to make a move up the leaderboard on the SKF Delmas Diesel Suzuki. On the car front, there were problems at the first refuel for Bux Carolyn and Jeff Bell in the Toyota Hilux. The technical crew were frantically working on the car, while other teams anxiously waited for their charges to put in an appearance.
Seems to be that the turbos, we got no turbo boost, so for the last 30 k's we've been driving without a turbo. But those oaks, we'll get them now. We were up to 3rd. We'll fix them now. Just watch.
After starting from the back of the field in the BP Raceco, brothers Klaus and Gerd Degener were on a charge through the field. The scene at the refuel was one of frantic activity, with cars coming and going at a rapid rate of knots. RP Reinico and Lucas Dreyer in the Toyota Land Cruiser were behind schedule at the refuel. While the Degeners roared back into the fray and other cars arrived at the refuel, Dreyer explained that their lateness was caused by an unscheduled stop to help pull a Sandmaster out of trouble.
Ons het 'n fontein ingery. Dit is 'n Sandmaster gaan uitsteep, dis hoekom ons laat is. Maar niks gebreek nie.
It was all great fun for the local kids, but out on the route it was hard going for the competitors. The terrain was constantly changing, and the quaintly named Don't Cough Pass provided crews with all kinds of problems. What passed for a track was strewn with rocks and boulders, and the cars were slowed almost to walking pace. Race leaders Franz Czepek Sr. and Franz Jr. were being chased by Rob Walk in the Superpave Raceco. It was a case of picking your way gently through the rocks and boulders, with punctures and ever-present danger. Behind Walk, the Sulwald brothers, Herman and Karl Heinz, were also going well in the Sulwald for Food Raceco, and for once they were adopting a cautious approach. There was also a cautious approach from Springboks, Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek in the Toyota Hilux. Still out in front in the quad racer category was Francois Coetzee. The lighter and much more manoeuvrable quad was a lot more spectacular than the cars, with Harry Roscoe in the lubrication equipment Raceco also carefully picking his way through the rocks and boulders. Behind Roscoe, the Barker Redden Land Rover and the Carolyn Bell Toyota were being chased by the Harper Hill Raceco and Klaus and Gerd Degener in the BP Raceco. Problems during the time trial saw the Degeners start from the back of the field, but they were cutting their way through the pack. Driver Klaus is a racer through and through, and he saw in the conditions the opportunity to pick up a place or two. At the bike refuel, cans of petrol stood like lonely sentries waiting for the competitors to arrive. It was no surprise when Alfie Cox was first on the scene in the Pro Action Castrol KTM. Cox had bombed his way to the front and was starting to stamp his authority on the race.
Alfie!
Alfie, you want something to eat? Quick.
A band of local spectators were intrigued by what was going on, but Cox had other matters on his mind. Last year, Cox lost the Roof of Africa rally when he missed a route control checkpoint, and this time the experienced Springbok was taking no chances. Darrell Curtis and Errol Dalton arrived at the refuel simultaneously. For the bikers, there's no such thing as the luxury of a service crew to lend a helping hand, and it's every man for himself.
5 6. 5 6. This is the last refuel.
While Dalton and Curtis rode back into battle, new 200 class leader Alex Vowles arrived at the refuel point in 4th place on the Antilex Dairy Kawasaki. In a tremendous effort, Vowles had moved ahead of Richard Manning to slot in behind the leading 250 class machines at the front of the field.
Fine. How's it going? All right.
At the end of day one, the Chepex and Sulwolds led the car section ahead of Derek Johnson, who turned in a 5-star performance on the Yamaha quad. For the Chepex, the situation could have been a little better.
And then we got to Duncroft Pass, and around the one corner there was like a big washout. There were no rocks in it, so you couldn't drive through it, but we fell into it, and it was too late, so we couldn't move backwards or forwards. So we had to reconstruct a little bridge, and took a few people helped us, and we took about 20 minutes collecting a whole lot of rocks and building this hollow up. And then by that time the Sulwolds caught up with us again, so we had to pull a bit of a lead on them, but at the moment I'm not sure, but they say we've got about a 20-minute lead.
On the motorcycle side, Alfie Cox was on track for his 6th roof victory. Vowles led the 200 class ahead of Graham McLaughlin, with Yuri Human out in front in the 500 class.
I've got a 10-minute gap, so it's better than nothing for tomorrow. But then the pressure's also on me tomorrow because I've got to not make any mistakes, and I've got to keep a cool head and just maintain a good steady pace like I did today.
Stay tuned for more Roof of Africa highlights. The car route for Racing Section 2 would again provide for a variety of differing conditions, but no one was prepared for the early drama that struck the Chepex. The race leaders ground to a halt just 8 kilometers from the start with a broken engine. The Chepex was stranded on the side of the road when Herman and Karl-Heinz Sulwold sailed past them and into the lead. With the Chepex out of the race, Derek Johnson moved into 2nd place on the quad racer. The demise of the Chepex also saw Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek pick up a place in the Toyota Hilux. They were being chased by Rob Walk in the Superpave Raceco. The other notable casualties at this stage were Klaus and Gerd Degener, who withdrew when navigator Gerd took ill at the overnight rest halt. Francois Smit had moved into 2nd place in the quad category, and looming up in the dust behind him was the Cliff Barker Mike Redden Land Rover. A great battle was starting to develop between the Land Rover and arch rivals RP Reneker and Lucas Dreyer in the Toyota Land Cruiser. The overall race situation was also interesting, with 3 special category vehicles being chased by 3 production class entries. Also going like a bomb and leading Class B was the tiny and superbly turned out Chenoweth, driven by Joe Smith, which had quietly moved into the top 10. The motorcycle brigade followed a circular route from the start back to the finish in Maseru, but unless something untoward happened, Alfie Cox was a cinch to add another chapter to his Roof of Africa legend. Cox simply took up where he left off the previous day and again demonstrated why there's no one to touch him in South African off-road racing. behind the race leader, Errol Dalton and Darrell Curtis were still riding together. The pair had decided to keep each other company, and their only problem was to stay ahead of whoever was trying to sneak up behind them. It was tough going up the mountain tracks, but for the bikers, this sort of thing is all in a day's fun. There'd been another change in the 200 class. Overnight leader Alex Vowles lost around an hour when he took a wrong turn, and Richard Manning went back into the lead on the Winston Yamaha. Back with the cars, there was also a shifting scenario. Rob Walk was starting to lose ground in the Super Pave Raceco, and there had also been another change in terrain, with rocks and boulders giving way to thick sand. Derek Johnson was still going like a train on the Yamaha Quad Racer, while Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Land Rover were making up ground on the race leaders. There were also problems for Carl van Rensburg and Dries Buys in the Fleandri Motors Raceco. The Raceco had picked up suspension problems, and van Rensburg and Buys were forced to take it easily and were coming dangerously close to dropping out of the top 10. There was the usual frantic activity at the final refuel and service point, with the technical crew working frantically on the Walk Super Pave Raceco, which had developed problems with the power steering.
That's why I look, because the engine oil is very hot. Yeah. I can turn it on the side.
While Walk looked on anxiously as running repairs were carried out, Alfie Cox went serenely on his way at the head of the motorcycle fields. With the race in his pocket, it looked at times as though Cox was on a Sunday outing through the park. Also thoroughly enjoying himself was Derek Johnson on the Yamaha Quad Racer. Johnson had a huge lead in the quad category, and in a tremendous performance was keeping pace with the leading cars. There'd also been dramatic developments at the front of the car field. The Land Rover in the hands of Cliff Barker and Mike Redden had surged into the lead. The cross-country championship leaders had taken complete control late in the race, and against all expectations had beaten off the challenge from the special vehicles. Still riding together, Errol Dalton and Darrell Curtis were enjoying themselves hugely. A flat-out section not far from the finish gave the pair the chance to indulge in some showboating, and they were making the most of the opportunity. Back with the cars, there was another blow for the Special Vehicle Brigade, with R.P. Reinicker and Lucas Dreyer moving into second place in the Toyota Land Cruiser. In the 200 class in the motorcycle section, there'd been another change of leadership. The Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki, ridden by Graham McLaughlin, had moved ahead of Richard Manning, who ran into late problems on the Winston Yamaha. The Sorwad brothers may have slipped to third overall in the car section, but were still out in front in the special vehicle category and were trying as hard as ever. In any sport, there's no substitute for class, and Alfie Cox once again proved to be the class act of the Roof of Africa Rally. The Italian cruised to his 6th win in one of the world's toughest off-road races. The fact that only one other rider, Italian Elio Andrioletti, had ever won the Roof more than twice puts Cox's record in the race into perspective. First to congratulate a delighted Cox was his wife.
For Alfie Cox, 6 times winner, his pro-action Castrol race.
In a superb performance, Derek Johnson was flying towards victory in the quad category. While Cox celebrated his win in traditional fashion, Johnson roared into the stadium at the finish, looking as fresh as he did at the start.
And please welcome on the second competitor on this year's Gestetner Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa, the quad K2, Derek Johnson.
There was plenty to celebrate in the AAD Land Rover camp when Cliff Barker and Mike Redden came roaring home to take both overall honours and victory in the production vehicle category. The win clinched both the overall and production category South African cross-country championships for the pair.
Big hand there for Cliff Barker and Mike Redden. Just going to hold back for 1 minute and 30 seconds on those lateral reads. 1 minute.
Hold it there.
Cox was busy signing autographs at the finish, and the AAD Land Rover squad were celebrating with champagne when Herman and Karl Heiss Silwald crossed the line to win the special vehicle class.
That's the entry of Herman in the race car.
Overall victory and 250 class honours to Alfie Cox in the bike category, with Graham McLaughlin winning the 200 class and Tom Klaassen the 500 category.
They haven't had rain here, it looks like, for a long time, and you know, it's so eroded, it's rutted, it's dry. When they did have rain, all this topsoil's been washed away and the rocks are sticking out even worse than ever. And it gets harder and harder every time we come here.
In the car category, an emphatic overall win for Cliff Barker and Mike Redden. With Artie Redeker and Lucas Dreyer in second place, a triumph for the production vehicle runners.
So I think it was good for the truck. Under ideal conditions, we got a first and second in the roof. I think that proves that the commercials can do it.
Highlights of the Gestetner Lesotho Sun Roof of Africa Rally.